Greetings and love to all you walk-awayers out there who are soon to be the runaway movement because it's running away like the runaway Trump train. Now I think it's at 140,000 that it's reached up. I've been communicating with this site since it started, or at least or when I found out about it, which was like July 2nd, I suppose. I don't know how long it's gone on. But I've done some letters that had a hard time being published through a series of mishaps and problems. And also now I've had my video on that's going to be on YouTube. And I put a longer version that's going to be on YouTube that was 25 minutes long. A lot of people have long ones on here, but mine keeps getting rejected for some reason. So now there's all of a sudden saying everyone's has to be shorter. So I'm making the short one with the timer on, and I just have a lot of stuff to cover that I can talk about. I'm 54 years old. I was a Democrat most of my life. I was in the Air Force at 17 years old till 21, and learned a lot about the government and a lot about the world and the way things work. And when you're on talking to people on this site or reading what people say on this site, you know, a lot of the people are younger people who all they know is Obama and Bernie, and you know, the more recent stuff that's gone on in our country. They're not really aware of, well, they're not aware of the history of this country very much at all. A lot of times you see this on some of the news shows where they ask kids who fought the Revolutionary War, who fought the Civil War. They don't know. They literally know almost nothing. So it's very important for people to learn that there's a historical, political, and most importantly spiritual element to all of this. My wife and I both have Lyme disease. She's had it since '74, and I've had it since '94. And what I see happening with this walk-away movement is that people are very sort of in shock. They're surprised at the level of animosity and hatred that's flowing out of people at them in their own families. And this is something that we strangely are used to, because people with Lyme disease have their own Lyme community that's all worldwide. And when you have Lyme disease, it's very much like the early days of AIDS, where there's an extreme attack that goes along with it, where you're not just sick and dying or feeling bad, you're brutally attacked by the medical community, by your family, you're ostracized, you're accused of faking for how sick you are. It's an amazing experience to go through, but it trains you in what spiritual warfare is. What we're experiencing in our society right now is an unparalleled spiritual war that's taking place. And it's very serious and it's very powerful, and this is why people are having such a strong reaction to this walk-away movement, because this isn't a movement of love, and it's more a movement of seeing what's really going on, where there's this strong, brutal hatred towards Trump. And it's not just towards Republicans, it's more towards Trump. And if you really think about it, it's towards the women in his family and the kids in his family, and you know, even little kids. So it's you know, this is the stuff it's pushing people over the edge to where they can't take it anymore. Looking back, I want to explain our walk away and my walk away. You know, like most people, I grew up believing the Democratic Party cared more about the poor. The Republicans I always knew were old, white, rich, warmongering. You know, this was something that was kind of just known about Republicans because that was what it was like in our lifetime. We had Nixon and we had Ford, and these people were, you know, Freemasons. The founders of our country were Freemasons. They weren't Christians. They were Christians at the surface, but underneath they were members of a secret society. This is something a lot of people don't know about or understand, but it's really important because if you're going to research this, it's important to know what the history of our country is, and it's built on Freemasonry, which at its core and its root is a worship of Egyptian deities back in time, or even predating that to Assyrian and Mesopotamian deities like the moon god. It's unbelievable. When you research this stuff, you find all this out. Romney and McCain, who were the two that ran against Obama, Obama came along and deceived a lot of people. And even though he deceived people, he was a more peaceful person and a calmer character. Even though I didn't agree with what he was doing, I still voted for him because even as a Roman Catholic, which is what we are, obviously, I'm bringing up the spiritual aspect of this because it's very important to see that this is a war and to see that who's good and who's bad. McCain wanted to fight the whole world. He was ready to go to war with Syria, Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, China, North Korea. I mean, he would have had us fighting everyone. Then you had Willard Romney, whose name isn't Mitt, it's Willard, and he was just a horrible guy that just lied 3, 4, 5 times in one sentence. He'd lie, and he showed this horrible disdain caught on tape, where he called people, a certain percent, 47% or whatever. So he literally was bashing half the country, which then Hillary made the exact same mistake and called, a big chunk of the country deplorable. It's funny in a way, but this is what happened. And so I don't regret voting for Obama like a lot of people do, because he was the lesser of two evils. As a Catholic, which I started to, pro-life is usually the main cause. So there's literally Christians and there's literally Catholics who will vote Republican simply on the pro-life issue. Pro-life is a huge, huge thing to open up. No one sane wants things to go back to the back alley days, and no one sane wants to take away a woman's free will, or any human being's free will. They also don't want to judge someone for being homosexual. It's wrong, and you're just not supposed to judge anyone. You're not supposed to accept people that are evil, though, and that's different. The way a person lives their life is not necessarily good or evil, as long as they're not hurting other people. It's when you start hurting other people and lying and smearing and degrading and accusing is the word. And Lucifer, who's the devil, was called Satan by Jesus in the Bible. When he called Lucifer Satan, the name Satan in his Aramaic tongue meant the accuser. What you see going on with Donald Trump is accusation after accusation after accusation, and it's all lies. If you look at his history, he's had 70 years of never being called a racist or a bigot. He was the first person to stick up for equal rights for homosexual people. He hired lots of homosexuals based on their capability to do a job. He didn't care about their sexual preference. He said right there in Advocate magazine in 2000, long before the Clintons did, that he was for equal treatment of gays, not preferential but equal, which is what every human should want, is just to get an equal shot at things. He hired women for his construction sites as forewomen. He had a woman design the first Trump Tower, so she was the first person to ever build a skyscraper, or first female, I should say, to build a skyscraper was hired by Trump. So he has a whole history of standing up for the black people, standing up for the Jewish people in Florida and all the different minorities for attending his clubs. People don't know the true history of the man and what he really did and what he stood up for over the years, because they just see his exterior and maybe the way he conducts himself. No politician ever that I've read about, and in my 54 years on earth, has ever gone into a campaign and promised big long list of stuff and actually done it. They all say they're going to do everything and then they do almost nothing. He's the exact opposite. He's literally stuck with every single thing that he said he was going to do. He's done, which is remarkable from anyone's perspective. And this is why everyone is freaking out so bad at him. The best people to listen to about the history of the Democrats is some of the African American or black people on here, whatever term we want to use. I say black, I don't say African American, because then we'd go around saying European American and Irish, German, Swedish American, and it can go way out of control. The black people on here, very articulate. They come on here and articulate beautifully the history of the Democratic Party, which I never knew my whole life. They supported Jim Crow. They supported the KKK. They supported keeping slaves. They support welfare, which sort of does keep people enslaved in certain ways. Some people need welfare, and welfare is good, and we should have welfare. But socialism doesn't work. It's never worked in any country. It didn't work by its inventors. The first Christians in Acts in the Bible tried it, and it didn't work even then, because it requires everyone to be honest and to share everything equally, and no one's ever going to do that. There's always going to be the greedy that take for themselves. The modern Democratic Party is evil, and the Republican Party has been evil. People need to research about Bohemian Grove, which is where Republicans and the movers and shakers of the world have gone for years and years. And I don't know where that timer is. The Republicans for years went out to Bohemian Grove, and they actually literally have human sacrifice rituals that take place. And supposedly they're staged, and it's a stage production. And it probably is, but the point is why would they do something like that? Why would people sit there, rich, millionaire, billionaire, heads of countries, heads of corporations, be out in the woods, all meeting together, hanging out and watching a mock ritual sacrifice before a giant owl statue idol of Moloch, which is in the Bible about 1,000 times not to worship. This is what they've done. There's pictures of Reagan and the Bush family and all these people out at Bohemian Grove down through the last decades of this century. They've been out there. So they've been dramatically spiritually evil, for real. And with the Democratic Party, we find out that Obama and many of the other people followed the teachings of Saul Alinsky. Hillary Clinton wrote her master's thesis or whatever her highest educational paper that she wrote was on the teachings of Saul Alinsky. And Obama followed Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals, and he gives credit to Lucifer as being the one that rebelled and gained his own kingdom, the first great rebel. You know, so literally they run their party based on these ideals that were a Satanist formed them. And then you have John Podesta and his brother Tony, who are the biggest operators for the Democratic Party in Washington, D.C. John Podesta was Bill and Hillary Clinton's chief of staff and was going to be Hillary's chief of staff. And he's literally such a bad person that he's not only just a Satanist, but he's actually a pedophile and a cannibal. And they don't hide it. You can look inside, look on the internet and just look up, type in Podesta art collection. You don't need to look into Pizzagate. You don't need to look at the dramatic reams and reams of WikiLeaks files and evil stuff about these people. All you need to do is do Podesta art collection and look what these people have hanging in their houses. The statues and the pictures on their walls. It's of child torture. It's of pornography. It's of mutilation, cannibalism, Satanism. This stuff is in their house, on their walls. These are the worst kind of people that have ever been in this country, and they're running things behind the scenes. This is why the Democratic Party is the way it is. It's actually possessed. And you saw it with Peter Strzok the other day. These aren't people that are just bad or greedy people that want a little money. These are people that are actually so spiritually evil, they're willing to ruin people, they're willing to kill people, they're willing to start riots, they're willing to turn black against white, they're willing to turn homosexual against homosexual, husband against wife. You know, they're sowing the seeds of discord and dissent and hate, and this movement is the exact opposite of that. This is a beautiful movement of love and peace, and it's amazing. It's amazing what we read on here and see in here. The testimonies are so beautiful, they make you cry. You hear so many people walking away from the hate and walking away from this anger and this viciousness, and this is what needs to happen, and this enlightenment needs to continue and to grow, and it is growing. It's turning into a beautiful spark of light that's spreading through the world and spreading in our country, and literally I think we're going to reach 1 million more, and there'll be a march and there'll be all these things. So this is beautiful, and we're grateful to be a part of it. And I have a longer version of this, and the longer version is going to be on YouTube, where the original one that I did that keeps getting rejected, even though other people have ones that are half an hour long on here. My long 25-minute one is going to be on YouTube, where I'm a little more in depth on a few of these things. So I'll just sign off here and say we love you all and God bless you, and we're glad that this movement is taking place and helping people to wake up, and please walk away. Walk away from hate, walk away from darkness and evil, walk away from the Democratic Party, which has turned all the way dark right now in our time. God bless you all.